Today's story was written by Reddit user Gelbeus. The afterlife was a battle between heaven and hell was winning. I remember the day I died. I'm not exactly sure what of. I was old and it happened during my sleep, so you could just say it was old age. I know you never really die of old age though, it's always something specific. Your heart gives out, or your lungs stop pumping air, or a million other things happen that finally kick you off the planet Earth. I doubt my morbid curiosity will ever be satisfied, but I don't have too many complaints. I just went about my day, lethargic though it was, went to bed, and then never got out of it. Simple, clean, and easy. I do have a few complaints with what happened next though. I woke up in a dark void. It was a bit of a surreal experience, as you can imagine, but more than being dead in a void, the thing that surprised me most was that I could still see myself if I looked down at my hands and torso. All black around me, but my hands were visible as if I were in a completely lit up room. That's how I saw that they suddenly lacked wrinkles. I was more energetic too, my body, such as it was, having regenerated back to its prime. It's not the complaint though, far from it. My main complaint is what happened next. After maybe an hour of floating aimlessly, I could see a distant ceiling of bright radiant light, and a floor that looked very much like a lava-filled hellscape. I noticed other people floating in the void fairly close to me, although for some reason sound didn't travel between us when we shouted to each other. Almost as if we were underwater. We all seemed a bit confused. I certainly was. But we weren't able to think about it long before the battle started. Armies started pouring out of both heaven and hell, and yes, that's what they both were. A bunch of stereotypical angels riding gold and white chariots were flying down towards us, along with those psychedelic many-winged ones. Seraphim, I think they're called? Coming up were a bunch of demons, some of whom looked just like humans with red face paint and horns, and some of whom looked more like orcs and goblins and hairy beasts, though all some shade of red. Red is a common colour scheme in hell. The two sides fought a bit, over us as it turned out. The angels tried to save as many of us as they could, and to be fair to them, they saved a fair amount. The demons grabbed more of us though, and I must say they were way rougher in their grabbing. I was one of the ones who was grabbed by the demons, and though I didn't have too much time to think while being dragged down to hell, I was a little confused as I never considered myself an incredibly bad person. I wasn't super pious in life, but I did believe. Was this all because I was too faithless when I was alive? Turns out no. As I later found out, heaven takes all types, religious or non-religious, good or bad, though they do sit you down and go over some stuff in that case. Hell also takes all types. It's just a question of how much each side takes. For quite a while, hell has been taking a lot more than heaven has. There's loads of reasons behind this. Earth is a bit closer to hell than heaven, so the logistics are easier on the hellish side. They're a bit more obsessed with violence and thus better at fighting, and they don't care about hurting you, so it's a lot easier for them to grab you in the middle of a fight than it is the angels. Didn't matter too much to me in the end though, as I was getting dragged down to hell either way. Hell is very hot, and once you're down there, a roof of jagged stone appears so you can't even fantasize about the cool void above. In life, I had hoped that it would be something like Dante's Inferno, where you get a variety of climates and varying punishments for the different sins. But it's just like the stereotypical molten lava field. Your body in the afterlife is pretty resilient to damage, and physically heals itself fairly quickly from the stuff it isn't resilient to. But it feels pain just as hard as it did when it was alive. To put my nonchalant narration aside for a bit, things really hurt down there. When the demons aren't fighting, they love to just abuse all of us who are stuck down here to no end, and they've got creative ways of doing it too. I won't go into too much detail because it's not fun to recount, but suffice it to say that my limbs got readjusted into a lot of places they really shouldn't have been. You got a phantom pain when your body adjusted back too, so you'd be feeling a broken arm sticking out of your stomach that wasn't even there anymore. It crushed the soul. For a while there, I barely even felt like a person, just an empty husk, only meant to feel pain. People didn't take too kindly to this, as you can imagine, and while the rule of the demons was never really shaken, there was some resistance out there. Hell is very mountainous, though lava volcanoes make up a large part of that, making it very easy for rebel groups to hide from the hellish authorities should they be able to escape. Probably the most notable of these is the Underground Railroad, headed by some of the same people who ran the original American one over a century ago. Legend has it that John Brown personally beat off some demons who were trying to drag him down and actually got to heaven, but jumped back down to help save others the second he could. They say Harriet Tubman did much the same, and that she works with the Archangel Gabriel to rescue people and smuggle them out. Those are the stories anyway. I never saw them in the part of hell where I landed. I did hear a lot of complaining amongst the demons though, so I did always think it was real. I certainly hope so anyway. Things went on like that for a while. I'm not sure how long, but from all the new arrivals, I was there for several decades at least, and probably more than 100 years. Not much eventful happened in all that time. Getting dropped in lava pools and having your limbs rearranged only has so much variety to speak of. That all changed one day when the ground started to shake. Now, the ground shakes quite a lot in hell. We do have volcanoes here after all. But this was something else entirely. You could feel it in your bones, in your very soul, and the demons could feel it too. They were pretty excited. Apparently it was a sign of the end of times or something to that effect. Accordingly, a giant serpent dragon leviathan thing emerged from the ground a few miles away from where I was, breaking through the hell ceiling and burrowing its way up to Earth, or the angels, or wherever it intended to wreak havoc. And when I say this thing was giant, I mean giant. It filled the entire horizon in one direction and was burrowing upwards for days before finally disappearing into the ceiling. All of the demons left with it, presumably to go fight in whatever final battle with the angels they were so hyped about. For the first time, we were left completely alone in hell. There was no celebrating, no rejoicing. We just kind of waited passively for whatever fate was coming. Several sections of the ceiling collapsed, leaving some crushed under the rubble. The heat was even more oppressive now, somehow. It was this weird combination of face-melting pain and total lethargy. I remember just laying down on a patch of gravel and staring up at the ceiling, wondering when the battles and rumbling would end. It did eventually. As the rumbling reached its loudest, the ceiling began to crack and disintegrate, covering everything in a thick layer of dust and ash. The volcano stopped erupting, the ground stopped shaking, and in the end all that was left was an ominous silence. Figures descended down from the open cavern, and they were not anywhere close to what I expected. What came down to hell that day was not a victorious army of angels to come lift us all up, nor an army of demons ready to torture us extra hard. It was instead an army of humans, real live people, flesh and blood, digging down to us all. There were soldiers, all on guard for demon attacks that would never come, but also others. There were humanitarian workers, doctors and other medical personnel most especially. They set up tents, we received medical care, we ate real food. We even slept in real beds for the first time in centuries, even if they were makeshift. I'll be honest, it was all a bit of a daze for me. I and a lot of other people were in shock just seeing it all. There is one thing I remember perfectly clear on that fateful day, and that is the moment I first walked into one of those tents. They had air conditioning. I hadn't felt cool air for so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like. Something snapped, something shattered inside me then in a way that was an overwhelming relief, but which I couldn't quite put my finger on. It was only later, after I had recovered, that I finally realised. For the first time in a long time, I finally felt alive.